Hi, my name's John Lee. I'm excited to talk to you today because I want to show you how to combine TM1 with Python using TM1py. Now, why would you want to do that? It could be because you already have the best application of its class, namely TM1, in terms of planning, budgeting, and reporting. You want to take it to the next level. Or you're interested to work out some edge cases and continuously improve the value of your application. Well, you've came to the right place, and welcome to 2020 because I'm here to help you. Now, I have designed a mini-series to use TM1py together with crypto, which is another good topic for 2020. We're going to bring some data down into your crypto model, which is going to be in TM1, and then do something meaningful with that. And plus, at the end of this, we could also leverage Python to maybe do some data science if you're up for that. Now, what you need in this series is you don't need any programming experience in Python, or you don't even need to be a programmer. But what you will need access to is a TM1 model. So, if you're excited, let's get started.
So to get this process started, what you want to do is to install Python first before you can install TM1py. So what I recommend doing is open your browser, go to python.org, or you can type it in, and then simply search for the latest version of Python. So if you can see on my screen, I'm going to go download Python 3.9. That's the latest version right now. And scroll down to the bottom of the page so you can see the right installation file for you. So what I recommend is the 64-bit Windows installer. Depending on your OS, it can be a little bit different, but that's a good bet. All right, so I'm going to click onto that, download it. As soon as that's done, I'm just going to hit install, and it's going to run. Now, there's a couple of things you want to watch out for in this process. The first one is you will probably want to set Python, add that to your path, because what that does is it allows you to execute the Python commands from anywhere. You'll see what I mean and how it helps in a minute. So just trust me for now. Click on that, and then the second thing you want to do is to customize the installation path. Now, if you go to the last screen of this, you'll see customized installation location. You want to change that to a more accessible place, and I recommend following the convention of go to C drive, Python, and then inside Python, go and create a folder called Python, and then some numbers represented by the version of your Python. So in this case, I'm going to have one called Python 3.9. If you don't have these folders, you'll probably want to make this folder. Once you're happy with that, hit OK, and you're good to go. Okay, so the next step of what you want to do is you want to open up command prompt to install TM1py. Now, if you've added the path like I suggested before, this process is going to be a whole lot easier. So what you want to do first is to go to command prompt. You could type Windows R key and type in CMD for command prompt, or you can search for command prompt by going to CMD this way. Right, so regardless, you see something like this. Now, depending on whether you added Python to your path, this process will look a little bit different. Now, if you did, that means I can execute the command from Python anywhere, regardless where this path is. So to do the installation for TM1py, I want to use the Python's installation package manager, PIP, and I want to type pip install TM1py. Just to check that it's installed properly, so we can go pip show TM1py. And this is saying we have the latest version of TM1py, and currently it's version 1.5.0, and the author is Marius. Okay, very good. Now that's done, I want to show you another command that will be helpful for you in the future, which is pip install TM1py dash upgrade. What that allows you to do is to run one command in the future to upgrade all the TM1py packages. So something to keep in mind of. Alright, Now that we've got TM1py working, and of course Python working, otherwise we won't be able to do the TM1py part, you probably want to install a development interface. And in this case, I would strongly recommend Jupyter Notebook, because you can see what you're doing, and that helps a whole lot for people who are starting out. Alright, so I'm going to say, I'm going to type in pip install Jupyter. And I've spelt that wrong, so I'm going to try that again. Pip install Jupyter. Okay, now he's handy little tip when you're installing Python TM1py and Jupyter. If you run into an error during the pip install process, just read the feedback that it has for you. So in this case, it clearly told me pip install something, whatever I typed wasn't correct, so I just corrected that. Alright, so now that we've got everything installed, let's do a quick check first before we start getting into the code. And what you want to do now is to make sure that your TM1 instance is accepting these REST API calls that's required for TM1py. And to do that, what you want to do is go to your TM1 installation directory, open the config file, which is a file called tm1s.config, right? tm1s.config. Once you're there, what you want to do is go down to the bottom to find where it says HTTP port number. Now, if that doesn't exist, you won't be able to get TM1py working. So that's the first thing you want to check. Alright, now if it doesn't exist, it would look something like that, and a good sanity check would be go to find and just type in HTTP port number. Now if you can't find that, that's obviously a problem, but if you can, then you're good to go. Now if you have just switched it on, which means you've just added this new parameter into your file, you'll need to restart your TM1 service. If you can't do that yourself, you probably would want to contact the TM1 admin if you're not that person. Now I've got full control over this, so if it was me, I would just restart the TM1 service. Now, if you don't have to restart the TM1 service, then that means we're good to go. So let's go to the next step. Back to our command prompt. We want to now open Jupyter Notebook. So once again, because we've got the Python added to the path, which means I can just execute Jupyter Notebook directly from command. So now that we have installed TM1py, Python of course, and then a Jupyter Notebook, which is something that we can code in. Next thing we want to do is we want to test that everything's working, right? So if we do a sanity check, just before we get to this stage and after we've installed the Jupyter Notebook, we've also checked the TM1 service component to figure out whether the REST API port is turned on, which is the HTTP port. And if that's turned on, we're good to go. All right, so first, let's visualize what we're going to get out of TM1 to test the TM1py connectivity and the TM1py installation properly. And there's no better place to start by looking at our end goal, which is a little crypto model, allows you to put in your analysis, put in your data, and it reads directly from a web service somewhere out in the exchange and getting data into your system. So here I've got a sample daily exchange rate cube. It's called daily rate. For simplicity's sake, I've got 3 dimensions, which is the bare minimum for this cube. It's going to have the currency, in this case in the crypto world they call it the symbol, so I've got the Litecoin to Bitcoin symbol. I've got a daily rate measure because every day it has open, close and volume as a basis. You can have more. And of course I've got the dates as well, right? So this is a good view for us to test whether things are working or not. Now to double check, the cube name is called daily rate and the view is called default. Now with that checked, let's go back to our code to see how you can connect the two together. So once we're in the Jupyter Notebook, we've opened a new Python notebook. What we're going to do now is start to pull things into this notebook. First, we want to import the TM1py library. So we go from TM1py, import TM1 services. Well, at this point in time, you could be starting to panic. Oh no, coding. What do I have to do? I don't know what I have to code. I don't know what I have to import. Where do I start? Well, fear not, because over there in GitHub, there's a library and a set of code that is specifically built just for this, right? It's going to answer your questions. It has a great sample, what I've got on the screen now. It's called Samples for Beginners. So if we take this example, it's just connecting to TM1 and it's getting some data themselves out of TM1 database. So that's exactly what we're going to do today. We're going to take some information, morph this into the context of my model, could be your model, and experimenting with the fundamentals of TM1py. All right. Install Python from TM1 service. We can run that by clicking on the run button, or we can just go Control Enter. I'm a keyboard guy, so I'm going to go Control Enter. All right, so now that's executed, let's add something else to run. Okay, so if we cut and pasted some of the functions of what we saw before in the sample code, we need to connect a TM1 via TM1 connection object, and here's a TM1 service. It requires the address, the port, user, password, and whether it's got SSL. So basically the simple stuff that you would expect that you would need to connect to a TM1 database. All right, so let's talk about it. What's address? So address is in relation to the IP address, I guess the DNS name. In this case, let's keep it really simple. It's on my computer, so it's going to be localhost. In your case, it could be 192.168.2.213 or whatever it might be. Right? That's just an example. Right? What about port? Is port the TM1 port? Is it the what kind of port is it? Is it Python port? Well, no. The port here, it relates to the HTTP port that we set up before, which is the port for REST API. So just copy it, or you can type it in. So I'm going to go port equals 8091. The user, of course, that's going to be the username and password for who you want to connect using the credential that you want to use to connect into your TM1 service. So in this case, keep it really simple. It's going to be a standard admin. You can, depending on what your password is, but for simplicity's sake, I've just left it as admin and no password. And then the last thing is whether it's using SSL or not. Typically these days it would be true. So I'm going to set that all up and I'm going to go Control Enter. Now it's going to give me some errors, and I've purposely done this because if you have never coded before, the chances are you're going to see plenty of this. So my suggestion to you is don't panic when you see them. Just read what it's saying and hopefully something would make sense to you, and you can change that and you can at least use it as a starting point to then reference back to another sample code or material that you're trying. Now in this case it's saying password is unexpected, right? Now what's expecting, of course, password and your username should be a string. So in this case I can't leave it blank. I have to actually put a single I got to put a set of quotes in there to let it know that the password is empty. Now if you think about that, then user equals admin. Admin should be a string, so I need to put quotes around here too, otherwise it's going to expect admin as in variable, which is not quite correct in our case. So okay, now we've got all the quotes in. I'm going to run it again, and then voila, the star came up, showed up and then ran away. That means this was executed and finished. Right, now that that's done, the last thing to do a check on is to connect to the TM1 cube, right? So the function that we're going to use here is one called TM1 cubes.cells.execute view to get the bunch of cells back. It's a good starting point because when you're doing things with TM1py, well, TM1 is a functional database that's based on cells, so you're going to be working with cells a lot. So that's why it's a good place to start. Now I've got the parameters in here in my clipboard already, so I want to populate the cube and I want to populate the view argument. Yeah. So in this case, my cube argument is going to be called daily rate. Now, if you forget, you can always go back and have a look at your TM1. So this is of course the TM1 web interface. So it's called daily rate. Yes, and the view name is called default. Now what's missing here? Yes, of course, we're missing the quotes. So it knows the name is called daily rate. It's not a variable called daily rate. Okay, now that we've got that up and running, let's execute that. Okay, it's just gone to TM1 and pulled back all the data. It's so fast you didn't even see the star, right? So now let's check what we've got. So what you can do in Python is just call the object name. In this case, the object name here is called cells. So I just type in cells and run that or control enter. And here's the data. So voila, we've connected everything. I know I've taken a little bit of time to explain some of this stuff, but in short, we've done 4 things very quickly. We've downloaded Python and installed it with the with the practice that I recommended. Second, we've installed TM1py and you've learned out how to update that in the future to get the latest feature sets. Next one, we've installed a development interface, in this case Jupyter Notebook. This is great because as you code, you can see what you're doing. Now, of course, there are other options which we'll talk about in the later video, but for now, we've got Jupyter Notebook working, and what we have done after that is we've gone in to check the TM1 service component to figure out, hey, is REST API turned on? Because if REST API is not turned on, this component is off, that means TM1py wouldn't be able to talk to it. So we checked it out and HTTP port is set to something. And then we may need to restart the server depending on what you've got before. And once that's done, we've came into a blank Jupyter Notebook, we've put in some basic code, and we've been able to verify the connectivity between TM1py and TM1. And there you have it. So moving on, later on in the series, we're going to do more exciting things than this. And of course, the next thing is we want to be able to pull data from a web service down to our Python script, and then through our Python script, pump that back into our TM1. So in fact, this view that we're looking at is all populated by TM1py. Okay, I look forward to seeing you next time. If you liked the video, then like and subscribe for the next one. If you have comments and feedback, please post them below.